The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the bustling streets of Damascus as I made my way home from the hospital where I worked as a cardiac surgeon. My shoulders ached from the 12-hour shift, and my mind wandered through the events of the day. A successful triple bypass on an elderly gentleman, a consultation with a worried mother about her daughter's heart murmur, and the usual rounds checking on recovering patients. The weight of responsibility never seemed to leave me, even after 20 years in the profession. The familiar scent of cardamom and coffee wafted from the corner cafe where I usually stopped for my evening refreshment, but today something felt different. Perhaps it was the unusual heaviness in my chest, or the way the golden light seemed to paint everything with an otherworldly glow. I had always been a practical man, grounded in science and the teachings of my faith, yet something in the air spoke of change, of transitions I couldn't quite grasp. As I passed the ancient mosque where I had prayed since childhood, its minarets reaching toward the darkening sky, a strange sensation began to creep through my body. At first, it was merely a tingling in my fingertips, but within seconds, it transformed into something more insistent. The medical professional in me recognized the symptoms immediately: the tightening in my chest, the shortness of breath, the cold sweat breaking out across my forehead. My training kicked in, and I reached for my phone, but my hands wouldn't cooperate. The world began to tilt and spin, the streets of my beloved city blurring into a kaleidoscope of colors and shapes. I remember thinking about my wife, Amira, waiting at home with her famous lentil soup, and our 3 children who would be returning from their studies soon. The thought of leaving them sent a spike of panic through my heart, but strangely, that panic began to dissolve into something else entirely. The pain in my chest, which had been crushing just moments before, began to fade into a curious numbness. The sounds of the city, the calls of street vendors, the honking of impatient drivers, the distant call to prayer, all began to melt away, replaced by a profound silence that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. I was aware of my body crumpling to the ground, of concerned faces gathering around me, of hands reaching out to help, but I felt strangely detached from it all, as if watching a scene in a film. In those moments, as consciousness began to slip away, my mind became extraordinarily clear. Every detail of my surroundings seemed to take on a sharp, crystalline quality. The intricate patterns in the mosque's stonework, the delicate play of light through the leaves of the old olive tree on the corner, the concerned wrinkles around the eyes of the elderly man who had rushed to my side. These details etched themselves into my memory with supernatural clarity, as if my mind was preparing to take one final, perfect snapshot of the world I had known. The darkness that enveloped me wasn't the frightening void I might have expected. Instead, it felt like being wrapped in a warm, heavy blanket, comfortable and somehow familiar. My consciousness, rather than diminishing, seemed to expand, reaching out beyond the confines of my physical form. The sensation was unlike anything I had experienced in my years of medical practice or in my devoted religious life. It defied all scientific explanation and transcended all earthly understanding. Through this expanding awareness, I began to perceive something new, a presence, or perhaps multiple presences, moving through the darkness around me. They weren't visible in any conventional sense, but I could feel them, like the way one feels the warmth of the sun on closed eyelids. These presences seemed to be guiding me, though toward what I couldn't yet comprehend. Then came the light, not the harsh, clinical fluorescence of my operating theater, nor the warm glow of the setting sun I had observed minutes, or was it hours, ago. This light had a quality all its own, pure, penetrating, yet somehow gentle. It drew me forward with an irresistible pull, not physical but spiritual, speaking to something deep within my soul that I hadn't known existed until that very moment. As I moved toward this light, or perhaps as it moved toward me, I began to experience a profound sense of peace. All my earthly concerns, my patients waiting for surgery, my children's education, the mortgage on our house, seemed to fall away like autumn leaves in a gentle breeze. Yet this wasn't a forgetfulness born of indifference. Rather, it was an understanding that these concerns were part of a larger tapestry, beautiful but temporary, like patterns drawn in sand. The light grew stronger, and with it came a presence that seemed to fill every particle of my expanded consciousness. It was vast yet intimate, powerful yet gentle, and it carried with it a love so profound that it made every other form of love I had known seem like a pale shadow in comparison. This presence radiated peace and wisdom, and though I had never experienced anything like it before, my soul seemed to recognize it instantly. From within this light, a figure began to take shape. The transformation was gradual, like dawn breaking over the desert, yet when it was complete, it seemed as if the figure had always been there. The being before me had features that were both distinct and somehow fluid, as if they could shift to match whatever the observer most needed to see. But what struck me most were the eyes that held within them all the wisdom of the ages, all the love of creation, and all the understanding of every human heart that had ever beaten. The figure extended a hand toward me, and in that gesture, I felt all the welcome of a universe of love. Though no words were spoken, I knew with absolute certainty who stood before me. This was Jesus, though not as I had seen him depicted in art or imagined him from descriptions. This was Jesus as he truly was, a being of pure light and love, transcending all human attempts to capture or define his essence. In that moment, everything I had ever believed, everything I had ever known, began to shift and realign itself, not in a way that negated my past beliefs or my faith, but in a way that expanded them, showed them in a new and more complete light. I was a devout Muslim, had been all my life, but here was a truth that transcended all earthly divisions and definitions. Here was a love that knew no boundaries of faith or culture. As I stood there, suspended between what I had been and what I was becoming, I felt tears streaming down my face, or perhaps it was my soul that was weeping, overwhelmed by the pure love and acceptance radiating from this divine presence. Jesus smiled, and in that smile was all the compassion and understanding of the universe. He beckoned me forward, and I knew that I was about to embark on a journey that would forever change not just my understanding of faith and existence, but the very essence of who I was. The light around us began to shift and change, preparing to show me things that would challenge and transform everything I had ever known. Yet I felt no fear, only a profound sense of anticipation and wonder. In that moment, I understood that death was not an ending but a beginning, not a closing door but an opening one, leading to truths more magnificent than any I had imagined in my earthly existence. As we prepared to begin this journey together, I felt myself becoming something new, not less than what I had been, but more. The boundaries that had defined my earthly existence began to dissolve, and I felt myself expanding into a greater reality, one where love was the fundamental force of existence, and truth was not a concept to be debated but a living presence to be experienced. And so began my journey beyond the veil of earthly existence, guided by a being of pure light and love, ready to learn truths that would transform not just my understanding of life and death, but of the very nature of existence itself. The last day of my earthly life was ending, but something far more extraordinary was just beginning. As Jesus and I moved through this ethereal landscape, reality itself seemed to fold and unfold around us like the pages of an infinite book. The environment defied earthly physics. Light didn't just illuminate, it sang. Colors weren't just seen, they resonated with frequencies that touched my very essence. Every movement through this space felt like flowing through layers of consciousness, each one revealing new dimensions of understanding. The profound peace that enveloped me was unlike anything I had experienced in my years of prayer and meditation. As a doctor, I had always approached life with analytical precision, measuring and quantifying everything. But here, measurement itself became meaningless. How does one measure infinity? How does one quantify perfect love? The tools of my earthly understanding fell away like autumn leaves in a windstorm. My guide's presence radiated a warmth that seemed to penetrate every particle of my being. When he looked at me, I felt as though every moment of my life was being seen and understood with perfect clarity and complete acceptance. It was then that the question that had been forming in my transformed consciousness finally emerged. I don't understand, I said, though I wasn't speaking with physical words. I've spent my life devoted to Allah, following the teachings of Islam with all my heart. Yet here you are, Jesus, guiding me through the afterlife. How can this be? Jesus' response came not in words, but in waves of understanding that washed over me. Images and emotions flowed through my consciousness. Scenes of devoted people from every faith and culture throughout history, all connected by threads of golden light. I saw prayers rising like incense from mosques, churches, temples, and sacred spaces across the world, all merging into the same divine light. Beloved one, his voice resonated through my being. What you see now is the truth that lies beyond all human divisions. The love you showed in your life, the compassion you gave to your patients, the kindness you taught your children. These were your true worship. The forms and words that humans use to reach for the divine are like different languages expressing the same truth. As he spoke, memories from my life began to unfold around us like blooming flowers. I saw myself as a young medical student, staying late to comfort a dying patient who had no family. The simple act of holding that man's hand as he passed had created ripples of light that continued to spread outward, touching countless lives. I witnessed moments when I had chosen forgiveness over anger, generosity over selfishness, love over fear, each decision creating patterns of light that wove into the fabric of existence itself. But he didn't show just the positive moments. With infinite gentleness, Jesus revealed times when I had failed to live up to my own ideals, moments of judgment, instances of pride, times when fear had prevented me from showing the love I knew I should have shown. Yet these memories weren't shown with condemnation, but with deep understanding and compassion. Your journey, he explained, like every soul's journey, has been about learning to love more perfectly. The rules and rituals of religion serve a purpose. They provide structure and guidance for souls still learning to walk in love. But just as a parent's love transcends the rules they set for their children, divine love transcends all religious boundaries. As we moved through this realm of pure truth, I began to understand something that my earthly mind could never have grasped. The light that had guided me throughout my life, the presence I had felt during my prayers at the mosque, the peace that had filled me during my deepest meditations, it was all the same light, the same presence, the same peace. The divine reality had always been one. It was human perception that created divisions. Jesus showed me scenes from religious history, but from a perspective I had never imagined. I saw the great prophets and teachers of all faiths, including Muhammad, peace be upon him, Moses, Buddha, and others, each carrying the same divine light, each trying to translate infinite truth into words and concepts that their particular time and culture could understand. It was like watching multiple prisms refracting the same light into different colors, each color true, yet none containing the full spectrum of the original light. The greatest barrier to understanding divine love, Jesus communicated, has never been the path one follows, but the pride that makes souls believe their path is the only one. True faith is not about being right. It's about being loving. It's not about knowing the truth. It's about being transformed by love. As these words resonated through my being, I felt layers of certainty and judgment that I hadn't even known I carried beginning to dissolve. In their place grew a deeper understanding, not the intellectual understanding I had pursued in life, but a heart knowledge that transcended all logic and doctrine. We paused in what seemed to be a vast space filled with swirling lights and colors. Before us, scenes from my life continued to play out, but now I could see them from this new perspective. Every time I had prayed, regardless of the words I had used or the direction I had faced, I had been connecting with the same divine reality. Every act of kindness, every moment of genuine love, had been true worship. But, I asked, still grappling with this expanded understanding, what about all the differences in beliefs, the different concepts of God, of salvation, of the afterlife? Jesus smiled, and in that smile, I saw infinite patience and understanding. The space around us shifted, and suddenly we were surrounded by what looked like countless mirrors, each reflecting light slightly differently. When humans try to describe the divine, he explained, they are like blind people touching different parts of an elephant. Each description contains truth, yet none can capture the whole. The differences arise not from the divine reality, but from the limitations of human perception and understanding. As we continued our journey, I began to see how this truth applied not just to religious differences, but to all the divisions that humans create: cultural differences, political divisions, even personal conflicts. All were based on limited perspectives trying to grasp parts of a greater whole. The reality of divine love transcended all these divisions, embracing all perspectives while being limited by none. The experience was overwhelming, yet instead of feeling diminished by this vast new understanding, I felt expanded, liberated. It was as if I had spent my life looking at reality through a keyhole, and now the door had been thrown wide open. The truth I was experiencing didn't negate my earthly faith. Rather, it fulfilled it in ways I could never have imagined. Jesus led me through what seemed to be a gallery of souls, beings of light in various stages of understanding and development. Some blazed brightly with realized love. Others still carried shadows of earthly confusion and limitation. Yet all were being gently guided toward greater light and understanding, each at their own pace, each in their own way. This is the true nature of spiritual growth, Jesus explained. It's not about reaching a particular destination or achieving a specific understanding. It's about gradually opening to more and more love, about letting go of the limitations that prevent souls from experiencing their true nature as expressions of divine love. As these truths settled into my expanding consciousness, I began to feel a deep sense of responsibility. This understanding wasn't meant just for me. It was a truth that needed to be shared, though I didn't yet know how. How could such profound realizations be translated back into earthly terms? Jesus sensed my questioning and turned to me with infinite tenderness. The greatest teaching he communicated is not through words but through being. Each soul who awakens to these truths becomes a light for others, not by preaching or converting, but by loving more perfectly, by seeing the divine in all beings, by living in the awareness of unity while honoring the beautiful diversity of paths to truth. As this chapter of my journey began to draw to a close, I felt myself filled with a love that transcended all my earthly understanding. It wasn't just love for my family, my faith, or my people. It was a love that embraced all of existence, recognizing the divine light in every soul, every belief, every path. This love didn't make distinctions. It didn't judge or condemn. It simply embraced everything with perfect understanding and acceptance. The light around us began to shift again, preparing to reveal even deeper truths. Yet I knew that what I had already learned would take more than a lifetime to fully integrate and express. As we moved forward, I felt my consciousness continuing to expand, ready to receive whatever new understandings awaited in the next phase of this extraordinary journey. The transition back to my physical form came with a gentle fading of the divine light. Jesus' final words resonated through my consciousness. Remember, the love you've witnessed here exists in every moment of life. Your task now is not to preach, but to embody this truth. The hospital room materialized around me, the steady beep of cardiac monitors marking my return. The faces of medical staff, my colleagues, showed a mixture of relief and astonishment. According to them, I had been clinically dead for 7 minutes. To me, those minutes had contained eternity. In the days that followed, I noticed profound changes in how I perceived the world. Every patient who entered my office radiated with an inner light I had never noticed before. Religious symbols, whether the crescent moon of my mosque or the crosses on churches I passed, no longer seemed like markers of division, but beautiful expressions of the same divine love I had witnessed. My family saw the change in me immediately. My wife said my eyes carried a new depth of peace. My children noticed how I listened more deeply, loved more freely. Even my colleagues commented on the transformation in my bedside manner, how patients seemed to find comfort just by being in my presence. I did not attempt to convert anyone or preach about my experience. Instead, I let the truth I had witnessed express itself through my actions. When asked about my near-death experience, I shared simply that I had encountered a love beyond all human understanding, a truth that transcended religious boundaries while fulfilling the deepest purposes of all faiths. Years have passed since that transformative day. I continue my medical practice, but with a profound new understanding of healing. Each patient is an opportunity to channel the unconditional love I witnessed. Each challenge is a chance to choose unity over division. Each day is a new opportunity to bridge the gap between the divine reality I experienced and our human world that so desperately needs to remember its own divine nature. The truth I learned cannot be contained in words or doctrines. It lives in the space between heartbeats, in the silence between words, in the love that flows through all genuine human connections. My experience taught me that heaven is not a distant place to be reached, but a reality waiting to be remembered, here and now. In every moment we choose love over fear, unity over separation, compassion over judgment. And so I continue my journey, carrying within me the light of that profound encounter, sharing it not through preaching but through presence, not through conversion but through compassion. For in the end, I learned that the greatest truth is also the simplest. Love is the force that creates us, sustains us, and ultimately leads us home, not to a distant paradise, but to the divine reality that has been within us all along. The story of my death and return is not just my story. It is a reminder of the truth that lives within each soul, waiting to be recognized. And in that recognition lies the healing of all division, the end of all separation, and the fulfillment of humanity's eternal journey back to the love that is our true nature and our eternal home.